Hey everyone, namaste. Welcome back to my channel, Hanukkah Healing. My name is Hana, and on this channel I share with you the spiritual and esoteric wisdom of yoga, Jyotish, and Ayurveda to guide you on your highest timeline. And today I'm going to be discussing the new moon that we have happening on April 27th in Bharani Nakshatra. So if you're interested in learning more about this new moon, stay tuned. Okay, so April 27th, 2025 at 3:31 p.m. Pacific time. So that's about 6:30 in the evening Eastern time. And that's just going to be super early morning in Europe and then a little bit later in the morning in Asia and the South Pacific. So between the 27th and the 28th of April, we have this new moon happening in sidereal Aries in the nakshatra of Bharani. So I thought actually I would just take a quick moment to explain to you the system of astrology that I do use if you're not familiar with Vedic astrology or you're not familiar so much with my channel, or if this is your first time on my channel, because there is some confusion just in general in the collective between what is Vedic astrology and what is Western astrology and what is the difference. And for me personally, like I've been super into astrology for a long time, and I've been into Vedic astrology for like 10 years. But I totally don't want to discount the legitimacy of Western astrology and the tropical zodiac on any level. I think that there are incredible Western astrologers out there who are deeply skilled and knowledgeable, and I've received predictions by tropical and Western astrologers that are super astute and spot on. I just personally have always resonated at like a soul level with Vedic astrology and the sidereal zodiac system of astrology. And I think that's because I've been a yogi for so long in my life, and been super into Ayurveda and made so many trips to India. And I always just felt this innate pull and call towards Vedic astrology. And so I just like resonate most as a Vedic astrologer. And most Vedic astrologers, not all, but most Vedic astrologers use the sidereal zodiac as opposed to the tropical zodiac, which is definitely a lot more popular in the West. And so the sidereal system of astrology is a little bit different than the tropical system. And that's because the sidereal system takes into consideration the precession of the vernal equinox, which means that the equinox, which is the starting point of Aries, the first constellation, actually moves just a teeny bit every year. So over time, this starting point of Aries and the equinox has moved almost an entire sign. Not quite, it's moved like maybe 26 or 27 degrees. I actually should probably double check that, but usually it's about 26, 27 degrees of an arc. So what that means, practically speaking, is that if we're looking up at the moon, the new moon that we have, as well as the sun, because a new moon happens when the sun and the moon, Surya and Chandra, are conjoined, that means that technically these two planets are in Aries. Even though from a tropical perspective, we would say that these two planets are going to be in Taurus, right? Or say you're born you're born in August and you're like, I'm a Leo sun. Well, technically, often, about 90% of the time, you're actually going to be a Cancer sun due to this precession. And it sounds a little complicated, but it's actually not. It's basically just that the sidereal system is more astronomically precise, whereas the tropical system is more energetically and metaphorically resonant. But I'm a Vedic astrologer, and I'm here to share about Vedic astrology with y'all and sidereal astrology. So this particular new moon is going to be happening in Bharani Nakshatra. And when I speak about nakshatras, I'm speaking about these subsections of the sky. So according to Vedic astrology, we not only have the constellations Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, etc. We have the goddess constellations that are the nakshatras, and they're the 27 mansions of the moon, his 27 goddess wives that he visits every single month. And so when we're assessing a placement, when we're assessing the position of the moon, we're not only taking into consideration that this moon is in Aries, we're also looking at which nakshatra, which is a subsection of Aries, is this particular new moon taking place in. And so this new moon is taking place in Bharani nakshatra. And Bharani is the second nakshatra of the zodiac. And Bharani is ruled by Lord Yama, which according to Tibetan and Hindu mythology, Lord Yama is the Lord of Death. And Bharani is symbolized by the womb. It's symbolized as this dark space of gestation. So if you think about a womb, the womb in general, there's so much we can say about the womb. Every single woman is born with this literal portal, this literal vortex, this source of wisdom inside of her being. If you are a feminine being who has a womb, you'll understand what I'm talking about. We can have wisdom that we learn intellectually. We can have deep feelings in our heart. But there's another portal, which is our womb, which is perhaps the space of our deepest knowing and our deepest wisdom. And so many of us as women are really cut off from our wombs and from our womb wisdom. And we're living up here. You know, we're living in our heart, we're living in our head. And oftentimes the greatest wisdom we can receive is from listening to the womb. And so this is really a time when we can slow way, way, way down in our lives and listen to the deeper wisdom that is coming through us. And even if you don't have a womb, you can still connect with the dantian, which is an aspect of the body or a section of the body in Chinese medicine, a few fingertips below the navel. It's that deep core of you, that deep knowing where there's a power. There's a power. And often we are so just blocked, as I've been saying, from this deep carnal, innate, almost like animalistic power. Because to live from our womb or to live from our dantian or to live from our lower center does mean to live from a more wild and unencumbered place. To give you an example, Jim Morrison was born with his moon in Bharani Nakshatra. And if you think about Jim Morrison, he was the epitome of the wild child. And he was able to, in a very shamanic way, like go into the underworld of the collective and of his being and channel these incredibly artistic and soulful messages from the depths of him and create with them. And that's really what Bharani is about. It's about going so deep within ourselves and accessing our shadows, accessing our pain, accessing those things that we need to really eradicate from our being and creating art with it. And that's why Bharani is considered to be one of the most creative nakshatras and the most artistic sections of the sky. And so any new moon, anytime we have a new moon, the new moon is also connected very much to the moon cycle, but specifically like a woman's bleed, a woman's period. And so if you think about a woman's moon cycle, it's considered that whenever a woman starts bleeding on her period, that's day one of her new cycle. And similarly, when we have a new moon, so this new moon that we have on the 27th, this is going to be day one of the new lunar cycle that's happening. And so even if your period isn't like starting on this day, like that's totally fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But there is this energetic similarity that no matter what your body is, no matter what body you're in, you're going to be able to relate to this. This is a time of going within, connecting to our deep inner wisdom, reflecting, beginning to shed and let go so that something can be born anew. And this is the case with every new moon, but it couldn't be more the case as with Bharani, that is symbolized by the womb. And also when we think about Bharani, really Bharani is about giving birth, creating from our depths and from our core, but also to give birth to something, we also have to die to something. To give the most literal example, a mother, say we have a new mother. If she's about ready to give birth, that's the ultimate creative act and creative force. And at the same time, she's dying to something. She's dying to her maiden era. She's dying to maybe being fully independent. She's dying to only having to look after herself. She's dying to that identity of being a single woman. And now she's being initiated and born as a mother. And so this moon in Bharani is really like an initiation for us. And so this is a really important time for you to feel into, what am I letting go of? What am I no longer going to continue? What patterns am I no longer going to continue to facilitate in my life? And what am I stepping into? Or what am I yearning to create? You might want to think about like those things that you're trying to call into your life, whatever that could be, a new relationship, a creative pursuit, a new job, whatever it is. And in order for me to create this, what do I have to die to? What do I have to let go of? And this is very apt because if you've been following my channel, you will remember that we had all of these themes of death and rebirth happening around the eclipse, specifically the solar eclipse that was happening in Pisces, and the big stellium that was occurring in Pisces. The last Rashi of the zodiac is all about letting go and surrendering. And so now the moon has shifted and the sun has shifted into Aries. And now the question is, what am I wanting to birth? But again, birth and death are so inextricably linked. They're dualities that can't exist without each other. So if you are feeling stuck, then it might be worth it to consider also, what am I still gripping or hanging on to that is no longer serving me? And this is also really an integration of the full moon that we had in Chitra, because Chitra, while is very bright and shiny, can also be about stuff that we're still clinging on to. So this time of spring in general is always about renewal, but particularly now it's really about making those assessments about what we want to create and what we need to let go in order to anchor in those new paradigms in our lives. And so just to give you a feel of the energy of Bharani, as I said, Jim Morrison had his moon here. And also Carl Jung had his moon in Bharani. And Carl Jung, for those of you that aren't familiar, is one of the most famous psychoanalysts of all time. And he in particular was so edgy. He really pushed the boundaries of psychoanalysis. Like, he had this huge falling out with Sigmund Freud because he just could not stay in line. He could not stay in that more clinical black and white way of being. And he really created this whole system of psychoanalysis with his dream analysis. And he was also able to go so far into his unconscious and understand himself through his dreams and his clients as well. And so this is a really, really good time for that kind of inner work, shadow work, and dream work. And it continues to be a good time because it has been a good time during these particular eclipses that we had as well. And then another person who's really interesting, who also had their moon in Bharani, is Carlos Castaneda, who is a really shamanic individual and very, very deep in his own right. And he wrote Don Juan, and he was very connected to the energy of death and the energy of transformation. And what I'll say is, you know, while I'm not, I could never call myself a shaman, it's a path that I feel called toward just personally. And what I've understood about the more shamanic path, in my very, very super limited understanding, is that it's really seeing both the darkness and the light and being able to hold both, being able to feel the pulse of God in all of it. And that's also a tantric perspective that Nothing is right or wrong. Nothing is black and white. Nothing is good and bad. As soon as we start moving into dualities in our life, that person is bad. The situation is wrong for me. I'll never do this. When we start shunning certain things, it's almost like we're shunning certain parts of ourselves. And so this is really such a good time to explore our depths, to do shadow work, and to be open to receiving messages in our dreams, and to really step into being more integrated and whole aspects of ourselves. There's this quote that I really love. I can't remember who said it, but I believe it was someone who was Christian. And it's, by the grace of God, there go I. And it's kind of like, if we're judging someone for something that they did, it's like, by the grace of God, I could only hope to have acted in the way that they did because of their whole conditioning, as we would say from a more Vedic perspective, their samskaras, the things that they've had to go through in past lives and in this life. If we had to go through the exact same thing that that person we're judging did, where would we be? What would we be doing? You know? So this is a good time also to assess, where am I judging myself? Where am I judging others? Where do I still have limiting beliefs up? And how can I start to create more space in my psyche, in my awareness, in my body, in my being, for something different, for a new paradigm, for a new map? And when we can create space, the womb is a sacred space, and it's the space that, when we can gestate there, in that liminal space, we can really give birth to something different. We can really create a new paradigm for ourselves and for our lives. So this is also a really good time for yoga, for working with your sacral chakra. Maybe doing, like, if you're practicing yoga, doing some hip openers, some yin practice. I would totally recommend that during this time. And also another really favorable activity for Bharani Nakshatra is gardening. It's so good for Bharani, and it's also so good for this time of year. So literally going out, being with the earth, planting flowers, planting seeds, or metaphorically planting flowers and planting seeds. This is a good time for that. So yeah, let me know how you're feeling on this new moon. Let me know where your energy is at. And I would love to hear from you, like, if there's anything that you're trying to create in your life, anything you're trying to give birth to, anything you're gestating, or if there's anything that you're really wanting to shed and let go of. I'd love to hear about it. And if you have any questions about anything that I shared today, feel free to drop them in the comments. And if you are interested in having a Vedic astrology reading with me, I'll leave a link in the show notes for that as well. And it might be really interesting for you if you've never had a Vedic astrology reading before. Vedic astrology is more based on the ascendant, and it's also super centered around the moon. And I do use the sidereal system that I've been talking about as opposed to the tropical system. And a lot of people find that once they discover more about their moon and about their Vedic chart, they really resonate with it. I'll say that. They really will resonate and feel like they know themselves at a whole new level. So if you're interested in that, I'll leave the link below. And I'll definitely be checking in with you soon, because we have some really massive shifts happening in May. I would say March was like the biggest month. May might be the second biggest month of the year. So I'll definitely be checking in with you soon to share the updates for May. And in the meantime, I'm sending these new moon blessings to you. And yeah, just praying for your highest timeline, whatever that is. And I'm really, really grateful to you for watching my video. Have a really beautiful new cycle. Hari Om Tat Sat.